Deadly Class Volume 7. Haven't heard that name in years. Love like blood. 3 words that to the average Joe might mean nothing at all. But to me, they're the key to all of this. 3 words that have haunted my waking nightmares for longer than I can remember. Some folks say I've lost my mind reviewing a comic book series out of sequential order. But I say, let them say what they want to say. If I'm gonna make any sense of this, I'll have to do something. Okay, I don't really know where I'm going with this bit, but I know it's strange to review Volume 7 after reviewing Volume 1. There's obviously a lot of story in between these 2 graphic novels, but I just really want to talk about this one, alright? I'll talk about the ones in between at some point, but for right now, we're doing a little bit of a time skip. I mean, it's not like anyone who watches my comic reviews hasn't read what I'm reviewing anyway. This might be my favorite volume in the whole series, and in this video, I'm going to explain why. I'm going to structure this video similarly to my first Deadly Class review, only I don't really need to talk about the concept since the concept hasn't changed. Regarding the concept, I would just like to reiterate that the school that this series is kind of named after does not appear at all in this volume. I know that the school is the driving force for the aspects of the narrative. I just think it's really funny how infrequently a story called Deadly Class actually takes place in a school. I suppose I'll have to summarize what happened from where we left off. Let's do a recap. Alright, remember Chico? He got killed by this Pokemon fan named Chester at the end of issue 6. Well, it wasn't him that killed Chico, but he took the body, so the gang needs to find Chester and his band of putrid weirdos so that Master Lin, the dean or whatever of the school, doesn't find out they went to Las Vegas, did a bunch of drugs, and got one of the students killed. They find him, he gets eaten by dogs, then Chico's family comes to take vengeance against the cold-blooded killers of their beloved Chico. If I was Mexican, I would hate my family for naming me Chico. They escape, except Maria's family comes and takes her away, and that's the last we see of her for a while. Marcus kind of goes crazy over Maria's disappearance and drives away the few friends he's made at the school. We meet this girl named Petra. Victor blackmails Marcus because he somehow found out about Chico. So he tries to shoot Victor in the back like a true gangsta. He fails at that right before final exams start. Ooh, final exams. Final exams are basically just kill everyone who broke the rules. Complete pandemonium ensues. A lot of characters die, including Willie, Billy, and Marcus. What?
I think he's dead.
The next semester starts and we have practically an entirely new cast of characters, including Helmet, Zenzel, Quan, and Tasawi, which is maybe how you pronounce that. Saya's family catches up to her. A new villain is introduced, Saya's older brother Kenji, who's the leader of this Japanese crime family. Quan is a mole for them and ends up helping Kenji and his men capture Saya, so now everyone thinks Saya is dead, which Victor took the credit for. Victor also saw Quan stab Saya in the gut and leave her at the mercy of her family. He uses this information to blackmail Quan. We also learn that Maria is not dead, which honestly wasn't much of a shock. She was just being tortured by Chico's family, but then she's busted out by Marcus. Alright, you got me there, Rick. I did not expect Marcus to come back from this. Quan learns that Saya intentionally made it only seem like she killed Marcus. How exactly did this not kill him? Well, you see, her blade slid past any major organs or vertebrae. The poison brought his heart to a near standstill, enough to make you appear dead while keeping blood flowing to the brain.
Huh?
Yeah, not really sure if that makes any sense, but I'm not a doctor.
That's how I lost my medical license.
There's a pep rally, and it ends with the new freshmen getting in a pretty bad situation, so they have to flee the school. Marcus and Maria are in Puerto Peñasco, Mexico, hiding from everything going on at King's Dominion. That's the name of the school, in case you forgot. Quan gets the squad to flee there as well, only he has an ulterior motive in leading Victor and another girl, Brandy, to deal with the freshmen, while also leading Kenji's men to get Maria and Marcus. They end up crossing paths and getting all buddy-buddy with each other, and by that I mean doing more drugs together. Quan is commanded by Victor and Brandy to let them into their motel room to get slaughtered, but Quan double-crosses them and they all leave through the window, except for Marcus, who is hiding in the closet and stabs Brandy in the gut and then puts Victor at gunpoint. And that's where Volume 7 begins. As a reminder, the sections I will be focusing on are the characters, the story, and the artwork. I'm starting with the story this time since I just got done summarizing the story so far, so I might as well finish up. Violence warning, I guess. It's gonna get pretty crazy.
Marasmus owes $12,000 to the Japanese mafia.
There's honestly not a whole lot of plot development in this volume. It's only 4 issues, first of all, and it's a lot of action. Like, just non-stop, balls to the walls, Hotline Miami level bloodshed. This is a big reason why this volume is one of my favorites, guys. It starts with Marcus pointing a gun at the back of Victor's head, like how the last volume ended. But Kenji's Yakuza guys show up looking for Marcus. I honestly don't remember why Kenji needs Marcus specifically. I could just look through the books again. I remember exactly what scene this is explained in, but I think it's funnier to just not do that. Now is a good time to comment on the design of these Yakuza grunts. Why are they wearing that? And how did these glasses work? All the Yakuza guys wear these rectangles over their faces, and it just sits there balanced on their noses, I guess. That would fall off so easily. I'm not saying it doesn't look cool. I'm just saying it's this first issue of Volume 7 where this series stretches my suspension of disbelief a little, because they are absolutely decimated by Marcus and Victor. They commit to a temporary truce in order to get away from the seemingly hundreds of disposable enemies. I mean, Marcus and Victor are no pushovers, but this escape from the Yakuza is how Jacket and Richter would have gone about it. You're not him, bro. Again, I'm not saying it's not cool. In fact, it's one of the coolest action pieces in this whole series. The level of carnage that comes from this escape scene with Marcus and Victor is almost comical. I'm just riffing at this point because I just want to keep showing these awesome panels. At the same time, everyone else scatters to get away from the Yakuza too, as well as the Mexican police who've involved themselves in this total massacre. They all split into twos and hide from the chaos outside. Helmet and Petra, Zenzel and Toss, and Quan with Maria. While there's some downtime, Maria wants to know why the Yakuza know Quan's name and why he knew Victor and Brandy were coming after them. Quan tells Maria the truth and they split up when the Yakuza show up. I keep calling them the Yakuza when they're referred to as the Kuroki Syndicate. It's essentially what you think of when you think of the Yakuza, so I'm just going to keep calling them that. Helmet gets shot, so Petra's tending to him. Z and Toss are hiding in the house while the Yaks are looking for them. Brandy was also hiding in there, coincidentally, while she's trying not to die from Marcus's stab wound.
Oh my goodness, guys, my stomach is rolling.
Despite her bleeding out of her stomach, she somehow takes down the gang members holding her. Man, these guys suck. When that's over, Zenzel goes in for the kill while she's distracted. Zenzel and Toss together are still not skilled enough to take Brandy down, so they run away right before getting picked up by Helmet and Petra. Let's go back to Marcus and Victor. Their escape led them alone on this beach. With all the Yakuza out of the way, they can finally duke it out. The final confrontation between two mortal enemies. After the bloodbath they just went through for the last 2 issues. Immediately after, they have to kill each other now. I told you, bro, this volume is nuts. This fight between Marcus and Victor is brutal, helped by the fact that it's so grounded. No weapons, no superhuman abilities or anything like that. It's just 2 people beating the spit out of each other. Just looking at the weight classes of these 2 characters, it would be pretty ridiculous for Victor not to win. I'm honestly surprised Marcus lasted as long as he did, but in the end Victor starts drowning Marcus in the sea. He gets saved by Maria coming in and slashing Victor in the back with her katana fans. She defeats a broken and exhausted Victor pretty easily, helping Marcus get his strength back and handing him a pistol to finish him off. I'll talk more about what happens in this part in the characters portion, but just know that he begrudgingly spares Victor's life. A decision that I'm sure won't be undermined shortly after this. Anyway, Victor tells Marcus that Billy was killed by Petra during finals. Again, I'll explain why this is important later, but either way, they leave Victor on that blood-soaked beach to catch up with the others, who are still trying to get away from Brandy. This leads to Petra and Marcus hiding in an alley. Marcus tells Petra the stuff he learned about Billy when Brandy comes out of nowhere and smacks Marcus in the head with a piece of wood, then proceeds to stab Petra to death. Then the Yakuza catch up with Quan at their side. He rats out Marcus with the promise that the rest will be let off the hook. In this final showdown, none of the others want to leave his side, choosing to die together. But just when things look bleak... Dude, it's Victor on the roof sniping these fools from out of nowhere. This was awesome. What can I say? You guys know me. You know how much I love snipers. The chaos that ensues due to Victor sniping them down was enough for them to escape. They hide out in Tasawi's family's home in some barren wasteland. Helmut's pretty upset about Petra. He kind of blames Marcus for not doing more to stop Brandy, and that's where Volume 7 ends. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of plot in this one. It mostly takes place in the span of a few hours, if that, on top of mostly taking place in the same couple of blocks. Compared to previous books, there's not nearly as much change in terms of setting and character drama. That being said, the character development that is here is some of the most impactful in the whole series. That's why I say this is one of the best volumes. The action is heart-pounding as well as near constant throughout this book. It makes makes the calm moments like at the end and after the fight with Victor all the more relieving, since those two moments are literally the only times we get a break from the intense violence. But it's not just meaningless fighting. There's some serious repercussions that come from these 4 short issues, making it just as important as all the other volumes. If I had to comment on something I don't like, I'd have to say that at multiple occasions, characters will just appear wherever the story needs them. This happens so often, it's honestly kind of funny. Brandy just so happens to go into the same house as Zenzel and Tasawi. Helmut and Petra just so happened to show up at the exact place and time they needed to. Maria just so happened to know exactly where Victor and Marcus were fighting. Marcus and Maria just so happened to know where the rest of the crew was. Victor apparently knew as well, unless he just followed closely behind them. I'm not sure why he would do that though. I think I would have walked the complete opposite direction if this happened to me. Funniest of all, Brandy shows up in front of their car out of nowhere. How in the world did Brandy get in front of them? They were driving away from Brandy when they got in the truck, and somehow, still with a deep stab wound in the gut, teleported exactly in front of them. It's honestly not that distracting. Every time a character shows up exactly when they need to, it adds to the drama and cinematicness of this story. Besides that though, this volume was pretty flawless. Usually when I'm reading through something with the intent of making a video on it, I'll jot down anything the book makes me feel so I can maybe incorporate it into a praise or critique in the video. But for this one, I just got so sucked in, I didn't write anything down. I was just so immersed into this crazy story. Let's move on to the characters. I've got a lot to say about these guys. The characters aren't that influential to the story in this volume, since it's mostly action, but the few nuggets of character drama that does exist in this book is pretty interesting. I'll start with Marcus, since he was who I mainly focused on in the last review. Last we saw him, he made a pretty good group of friends from the school, but like I said in the recap, he kinda goes crazy because he blames them for Maria's supposed death. By the time final exams start, he's pretty much at his lowest point, willing to kill Victor behind a mask on school property just to protect his own skin. Marcus's fake-out death could have been an opportunity for a sort of rebirth. He successfully escaped that awful place that caused him so much heartache, and living a blissful, peaceful life with the love of his life. Yet when we finally meet up with him and Maria again, he's still scheming in his head ways to get revenge. He still mourns Willie's death and clearly can't let it go. Unlike Maria, who seems to be perfectly content with forgetting about the school where survival is extra credit. Survival isn't even extra credit, by the way. That's not how grading works at this school. So when his friend's killer comes to him, he of course welcomes the trauma back with open arms. It was probably his idea to stay behind to shoot Victor instead of fleeing with all the others. His monologue as he's about to be drowned by Victor reflects his monologue from the last time we saw him on this beach. Only instead of feeling like the start of a new chapter in his life, it reads more like the closing of one. From this, we can tell Marcus is still so unsure about who he is. He's always reflecting on his past, reflecting on his choices. When he has his enemy at the end of a gun barrel, Willie appears to him and starts rationalizing. Similarly to how he rationalizes in his journaling we see throughout the series. Obviously, it's not literally Willie's ghost trying to prevent him from killing Victor. It's just a manifestation of that analytical side of himself. Just when you think Marcus might spare Victor's life, he drops the bomb. Petra killed Billy. One of the most cruel and tragic deaths in this whole series. Petra betrays Billy, killing him to save her own reputation at the school. Billy was the only one in the Vegas group that stuck with Marcus till the end. He really wasn't a bad kid. He was pretty messed up, but he wasn't cold-blooded like so many others around him. Marcus himself says he didn't belong at that school. He didn't belong in the midst of all those lunatics. Yet he was one of the few victims cannibalized in that destructive environment. This spiraling rage Marcus must feel at this moment gives all the reason to shoot Victor in the head. But he doesn't. He somehow put everything in perspective, right before he pulled the trigger. This is Marcus's rebirth. No longer being controlled by fear and rage, but capable of accepting the past and forgetting those who've trespassed against him. This is also the last time Marcus mentions wanting to kill Ronald Reagan. Him letting go of his thirst for revenge is so meaningful. Marcus's revenge is the whole reason he stayed in King's Dominion. And now, his release of this quest for revenge symbolically severs any connection he might have had to that place. But then there's still Petra. Marcus tells Petra that he knows about what she did to Billy, and says he forgives her for it, but he doesn't really mean it. He admits himself in the moment of Petra's murder that he can't muster his strength to save her because of what she's done. Whatever the motivation for lying to Petra was, it's obvious there's still a lot of growth for this character yet to be done. But that's pretty much all I have to say about Marcus in this volume. Let's talk about the others, because even though Marcus has the most going for him in terms of character stuff, everyone else still has a lot of depth to them. Let's talk about Maria, Marcus's love interest. She, at this point of the story, feels like the strongest and most confident out of every character. The few scenes she has in this volume shows that in the coolest way possible. Although I really gotta complain about how she acts in this part on the beach with Victor. She keeps flipping between encouraging Marcus to kill Victor and trying to convince him to just let it go and help their friends. It feels like she's written to be an opposing force against Marcus for the sake of tension, even if she has to constantly change which direction that opposing force is going. I could say more, but like I said already, there's not a lot of character stuff specific to this volume, so I'll save that discussion for another time. I didn't talk about Maria much in the last volume because there really wasn't much to say. After issue 6, Maria really started to become one of my favorite characters, especially at the start of volume 3. She and Marcus really feel like a tightly knit couple, especially after all the time they've spent away from the school. This bond between them is going to get looser and more fragile soon after this book, so I'll also save that discussion for another video. In terms of the others, I actually have something to say about. There's Helmut, who's one of my favorite characters in this whole series. That probably has to do with the fact that he's a metalhead. In a world that continues to create worse and worse heavy metal, metalhead representation is hard to come by, which is universally agreed upon to be the most important kind of representation in media. Anyway, the loss of Petra is going to be more important to Helmut's character later, so that's all I'm going to say about him. This volume is also when we learn about Zenzel's backstory. There's honestly not much for me to say. It's really not even that bad compared to Marcus or Maria or Saya, but it's still nice to know, I guess. I'm not sure why I care more about metalhead representation than Christian representation. I guess a guy who kills people with a battle axe is more representative of the heavy metal community than a chick who kills people with hammers is to the Christian community. Quan is a pretty interesting character to talk about, I think, mostly in that he's kind of in the same situation as Marcus was at the end of Volume 3. He just seems like a kid who keeps making bad decisions because he's in too deep. He led Victor and Brandy, as well as the Yakuza, to his group of friends purposefully. But instead of following through with his deception, he told them the situation, saving all of their lives. Most of their lives. This could have been the point where Quan decides to make up for all the subterfuge, but he cowers under pressure again. He didn't really need to split up with Maria at this moment. He could have escaped with her, but instead he fell back on his old habits and rats out his friends again. We like this character. He's really charismatic and still clearly cares about others, so it feels good when he tells the truth and sticks with his friends, but it feels bad when he just keeps folding under pressure. I sure do hope things work out well for old Quan Dog over here. And then there's Victor. I feel like Marcus deciding to not kill Victor. In fact, this entire scene on the beach contributes to humanizing him. For this whole series, he's been just an antagonizing, arrogant meathead that's done nothing but harm our main characters. But now he finally feels just as three-dimensional and layered as everyone else, which I appreciate. Plus, the part where he goes MLG with the sniper rifle was pretty hype. That's pretty much all of the characters I wanted to talk about, so let's move on to the artwork. But first, a word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by the all-new Ford F-150. What you need is a truck that's built to last. One that can take on any road that only the most adventurous among us are willing to take. Now with custom LED trim and taillights, this truck comes with all the standard features of today's automobiles and more. But this beauty's more than just the sum of its parts. It's a call to action to go where no one has dared to go before. In the all-new Ford F-150. Thank you, Ford, for sponsoring this video. Now back to it.
This art hurt me!
As a reminder, the art for this series is done by Wes Craig, but the colorist has since changed to Jordan Boyd. Remember when I said that Wes's craftsmanship was a little rough at times in the first volume? Well, that is absolutely not the case by this point in the series. It's really cool reading a long-running series with the same artist. You can see very quickly the art get refined and develop into the best version of itself. That's definitely the case for Deadly Class, because just comparing how Wes draws Marcus, you can see how much his style has improved. Besides the amazing improvement in his art, there's not much for me to say that I didn't say in the last review. His art still has a lot of really nice motion and energy, which is especially important in a book as action-heavy as this one. Color is still used very effectively, even though the color palette doesn't change that much, since the environment doesn't change that much. The covers still go super hard, and that's all I gotta say. I'm giving Deadly Class Volume 7, Love Like Blood, a 5 out of 5 stars. It's tense, dramatic, gripping, emotional, with consequence to the story and characters, and fantastic art as usual. Don't ask me what Love Like Blood means, or why it says that there are 5 parts even though it ends after 4 issues.